Hey everybody, Howard here. Today I'm going to be showing you how to build a simple picture frame, which is a great project for you beginner woodworkers out there. The awesome thing about this project is the scalability of it. So you can literally build it as small or as large as you want. Now, these are great for gifts, and if you're trying to get your own woodworking business started, you can use the same concept with some rustic materials and a mirror, and you've got a project that's guaranteed to sell. So let's go ahead and get into it. So for this project, I've chose some 1x4 pine boards that I picked up from the hardware store. The first thing we're going to need to consider is our inset and our overlay. So for this particular project, I'm going to need an overlay of 1/2 inch. And then considering the piece of glass, the picture, and the backer board that I'll be using, I'm going to need 3/8 of an inch inset. Now to achieve that, I'm going to come here and set my table saw to a height of 3/8 of an inch. And then I'll just run these pieces through the table saw little by little to get the overlay. Now we'll go ahead and use our chisel and clean this channel out. So our next step is going to be cutting the pieces to size. I'm going to need 2 pieces at 36 and 3/16 and 2 pieces at 24 inches. Now we have to keep in mind, whenever we're making our cuts, because we have this channel here, we're going to be measuring to here on the inside of our channel. Otherwise, our channel will just be the outside perimeter of the picture and we won't be using our inlay. So now that we got all of our pieces cut out, the next thing we need to do is joint everything together. For this, I'm going to be using a Craig pocket slot jig. Now, I feel like this is a really underrated tool. These are excellent for getting good, solid joints put together. So now we can go ahead and assemble our joints. Now I've gone ahead and used some cutoff pieces to kind of help give me a flatter joint. This process can be pretty tedious, at least for me. I'm very particular about my joints. They do make jigs. I probably should have invested in one a long time ago, but we're just going to go ahead and put some wood glue in, clamp it down, and hope for the best. So now it's time for what I feel like is the most overlooked part of any woodworking project, and that's the sanding. And I can't stress enough how important a good sanding job is on any project. A lot of times I'll see stuff and it hasn't been sanded well, the stain doesn't take properly, and it's all splotchy. Now, with woodworking, the beauty is in the details. I spend a lot of time picking out my wood, setting my patterns, and trying to find what I feel like is the most aesthetic piece of the wood. Now, I know sanding can be boring and meticulous, but again, it is the most important part of the project aesthetically. Now, whenever you're using a random orbital sander, you can almost tell by feel whenever it's time to go to the next grit, your next higher grit. You'll start to feel that it isn't grabbing as much and it's starting to spin a lot smoother and it's moving around. Once you get to that point, you should be pretty good to go ahead and move to your next higher grit. So there were a few imperfections in here that I wasn't too crazy about, so I went ahead and put some wood filler in those, and now we're going to go ahead and bump up to the next grit of sandpaper. Now we'll go ahead and hit it yet again with some 120. And then finally, we'll go ahead and hit it with a piece of 180. So now we're going to go ahead and apply our stain. I like to use this Minwax. We're going to be using a classic gray for this project. I feel like with the picture that's going to be going in this frame, this stain is going to match it pretty well. Now, applying stain can be a tricky process. You've got to kind of be quick about it. You almost want to apply more than what you need, and you have to be really careful when you're doing your sections. You want to make sure that you fade those sections together really well. Otherwise, again, you'll kind of get a splotchy finish on it. So I like to fold up a rag pretty neat like this and use it as an applicator, and then I'll have what we always called a fade rag that's dry, and then come behind it and kind of wipe everything clean, and hopefully we'll get a really nice even finish on this. Now, just a couple quick tips. Whenever you're applying stain, you want to remember the higher of a grit that you sand, the lighter the coloring is going to be on your stain. So if I were to have taken this up to a 220, obviously it would be a lighter gray, and if I would have stopped sanding at 120, we would have got a darker finish. Now, I prefer to see a little more of the wood grain, so I like to finish with a higher grit. And then another thing to keep in mind Obviously, the longer you let the stain sit on the wood, the darker the finish is going to be. So that's kind of why I like to come behind real quick and just wipe it. And that's also going to kind of help combat some of that splotchiness that you see. So the next thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and apply our clear coat. I'm going to be using a Minwax semi-gloss polyurethane. For certain projects, I like to use this spray on. It's just a little quicker and a little easier. Different projects, I'll use the brush on, so it really depends on the application. So now that our clear is dry, we can go ahead and add our piece of glass. Now we'll go ahead and add our print. The story behind this, so this is going to be a Christmas gift for my mother, and whenever I was young, between her and my grandma, they probably had a small fortune in Patty Bannister artwork. Now those have come to collect a premium these days, but this is an AI generated photo that's meant to replicate a Patty Bannister, and hopefully she likes it. Now I've got a piece of 1/4 inch blonde wood, and this is what I'm going to use as the backer, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that to size. So now that we got our backer board cut out, you can buy the little pieces to go around the edge of the frame and hold this backer board into place, and it makes it removable. But for this, I don't see anything else ever going inside this frame, so I'm just going to go ahead and caulk it in here. Alright, so the last thing we're going to need to do is add our hardware for hanging. I like to use these D-rings here. So whenever we're putting our hardware on, at least with something this wide, for our measurements, studs in a residential home are on 16-inch centers. So what I'm going to do is find the center of the width of our frame. So we've got 42 1/8. So I'm going to come to 21 1/16, mark that, and then I'm just going to go 8 inches on either side of it. And then from there, for our height, we'll go center for the D-ring. So that's 3 inches, and then we'll mark it at 1.5 inches. And here we have our final product. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. If you like what we're doing here on the channel, give us a like and a subscribe, and as always, have a great day.